The First World War ended in 1918, leaving Europe in a state of devastation and despair. The war had claimed millions of lives and left entire nations in ruins. The world was desperate for peace and stability. With the Treaty of Versailles, this treaty was signed in June 1919 in the opulent Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles in France. It was intended to be a peace settlement that would prevent future conflicts. This treaty, meant to ensure peace, instead sowed the seeds for another, even more devastating conflict. The terms of the treaty were harsh and punitive, particularly towards Germany. The treaty blamed Germany for the war and imposed harsh penalties. Germany was forced to accept full responsibility for the conflict, a clause that came to be known as the War Guilt Clause. Germany lost territory and was forced to pay heavy reparations. These reparations were crippling, amounting to billions of dollars, and placed an enormous strain on the already weakened German economy. This crippled the German economy and bred resentment among its people. Hyperinflation, unemployment, and poverty became rampant, leading to widespread discontent and a sense of national humiliation. From this fertile ground of anger and humiliation rose a charismatic leader, Adolf Hitler. Hitler, a former soldier, capitalized on the widespread discontent and promised to restore Germany's pride and power. Hitler and his Nazi party exploited the economic woes and national pride of Germany. They used propaganda and mass rallies to galvanize support, painting themselves as the saviors of the nation. He promised to restore Germany to its former glory. His message of hope and renewal resonated deeply with the German people, who were desperate for a way out of their plight. Hitler's message resonated with the German people, desperate for a way out of their plight. The Nazi Party's rise to power was swift and decisive as they tapped into the collective anger and frustration of the populace. Across Europe, similar sentiments of nationalism and economic hardship fueled the rise of other totalitarian regimes. The economic instability of the 1920s and 1930s created fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root. In Italy, Benito Mussolini and his fascist party promised to restore the Roman Empire to its former grandeur. Mussolini's vision of a new Roman Empire appealed to the Italian people's sense of history and national pride. In Japan, militarists seized control, aiming to expand Japanese influence throughout Asia. The Japanese military sought to establish dominance in the region, driven by a desire for resources and territorial expansion. The world, still reeling from the Great War, was ill-prepared for the storm brewing on the horizon. The economic and political instability of the interwar period created a volatile environment ripe for conflict. These totalitarian regimes, fueled by aggressive expansionist ambitions, set the stage for a cataclysmic clash of ideologies and global power. The ambitions of these leaders would soon plunge the world into another devastating war. The world watched with bated breath as the shadow of war loomed large, threatening to engulf the world once again in a maelstrom of unprecedented violence and destruction. The lessons of the past seemed to have been forgotten, and the stage was set for a conflict that would reshape the world order. As tensions escalated throughout the 1930s, the world found itself on the brink of a monumental shift. The political landscape of Europe was changing rapidly, and the spectre of war loomed ever larger. The world grappled with how to address the growing threat of Nazi Germany. Leaders and citizens alike were caught in a web of uncertainty and fear, unsure of how to respond to Hitler's aggressive posturing. A policy of appeasement, championed by leaders like Neville Chamberlain of Great Britain, aimed to pacify Hitler by conceding to some of his demands. Chamberlain, along with other European leaders, believed that by making certain concessions, they could maintain peace and stability in the region. The hope was that by appeasing his ambitions, war could be avoided. Many people across Europe clung to this hope, yearning for a peaceful resolution to the mounting tensions. This hope proved tragically misguided. Hitler's ambitions were far greater than anyone had anticipated, and his appetite for power was insatiable. Emboldened by the lack of strong opposition, Hitler grew more audacious in his territorial ambitions. He saw the policy of appeasement as a sign of weakness and an opportunity to expand his empire without significant resistance. In 1938, Germany annexed Austria, a move met with little more than diplomatic protests. The Anschluss, as it was called, was a clear indication of Hitler's expansionist agenda. The world watched nervously as Hitler set his sights on the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a predominantly German population. The tension was palpable and the stakes were higher than ever. The Munich Agreement, signed in September 1938, ceded the Sudetenland to Germany in a last-ditch effort to avert war. Chamberlain famously declared that the agreement had secured peace for our time, but this peace was fleeting. However, this act of appeasement only served to embolden Hitler further. He interpreted the Munich Agreement as a green light to pursue his aggressive policies without fear of retribution. On September 1, 1939, German forces invaded Poland, shattering any remaining illusions of peace. The Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, strategy employed by the Germans was swift and devastating. Great Britain and France, bound by treaty obligations, declared war on Germany, marking the beginning of World War II. The world was plunged into a conflict of unprecedented scale and destruction. The world watched in horror as the flames of conflict engulfed Europe once more. The era of appeasement had ended, and the brutal reality of war had begun. The German Wehrmacht, under Hitler's command, unleashed a new form of warfare upon the world blitzkrieg. This lightning war relied on speed, surprise, and overwhelming force, catching enemies off guard. German tanks, supported by dive bombers, smashed through enemy lines, quickly overrunning defenses and sowing chaos and confusion. Poland, caught off guard by the ferocity of the German attack, fell within weeks, unable to mount a significant defense. Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg soon followed suit, falling victim to the relentless onslaught of the German war machine. By June 1940, France, considered at the time to have one of the strongest armies in the world, had also surrendered. Great Britain, standing alone against the Nazi juggernaut, braced for invasion, preparing for the worst. The Battle of Britain, an epic clash of air power, raged in the skies over England during the summer and fall of 1940. The Royal Air Force, though outnumbered, fought valiantly against the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force. The courage and determination of the British pilots, along with the development of radar, proved crucial in denying Germany air superiority and ultimately thwarting Hitler's plans for an invasion of England. While the world watched the dramatic events unfolding in Europe, the war expanded far beyond the confines of the European continent. The conflict, initially centered in Europe, soon engulfed nations across the globe, drawing in countries from every corner of the world. Japan, allied with Germany and Italy in the Axis powers, sought to establish dominance in Asia and the Pacific. Their ambitions were not limited to mere territorial gains, but extended to reshaping the political landscape of the region. In 1937, Japan launched a full-scale invasion of China, a move that would have devastating consequences for millions, marking the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War. This brutal conflict saw widespread atrocities and immense suffering as both sides engaged in fierce battles. Driven by imperial ambitions and a desire for resources, Japan continued its aggressive expansion. Japan continued its expansion throughout Southeast Asia. Their military campaigns were marked by swift advances and brutal tactics, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. On December 7, 1941, in a surprise attack that shocked the world, Japanese aircraft bombed Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, a strategic move aimed at crippling the United States' ability to project power in the Pacific. The main base of the United States Pacific Fleet, the attack resulted in significant losses, with numerous ships damaged or destroyed and thousands of lives lost. The attack, intended as a preemptive strike to cripple American naval power, instead had the opposite effect, galvanizing American public opinion and bringing the United States into the war. The nation, once divided on the issue of involvement, now stood united in its resolve to defeat the Axis powers. With the entry of the United States, the conflict escalated into a truly global war. The scale of the conflict grew exponentially, with battles being fought on multiple fronts across different continents. Battles raged across vast distances, from the deserts of North Africa to the steppes of Russia, from the frozen wastelands of the Eastern Front, where soldiers endured harsh winters and relentless combat, to the jungles of Southeast Asia, where the terrain posed its own unique challenges, and the islands of the Pacific, where amphibious assaults and naval battles became the norm. Millions of soldiers and civilians were caught up in the maelstrom, their lives forever changed by the horrors of war. The human cost was staggering, with countless lives lost and entire cities reduced to rubble. Their lives forever changed by the horrors of war. The legacy of this global conflict would shape the world for generations to come, leaving an indelible mark on history.